Okay, so we kind of put a pause on our syllabus schedule, and to really make sure that we had some time to get all the textures on our blacksmith shop just really dialed. I think we had some good comments and some feedback last week on the structure of your blacksmith shops, and hopefully at this very moment you should have an asset that's ready to make the jump over into our game engine. Starting this week and going forward, pretty much every single week, we're always going to be sending something over into our game engine and really beginning to understand in a direct fashion how the game engine is going to be rendering all of our models, the import-export procedure, which is very unique and incredibly different, okay? Something that we really haven't tackled before in any other class. And so that's going to be a challenge for us as we kind of walk through the next couple of weeks, okay? Now, next week we're going to look at some interesting modeling stuff. We're going to talk about characters, and we're going to start the process of characters, and then we're going to keep working on Unity stuff as well at the same time, okay? Questions on what we're going to be striving to accomplish over the next couple of weeks? Yeah, good? Administratively, and I think I mentioned this last week, but it's kind of important. I want to make sure everyone's aware. The month of November is weird and funky and kind of awesome in every single way. Well, awesome for you guys. The next time I see you guys, it's going to be a new month, right? Next week is going to be November 1st, or 2nd, excuse me. November, so not next week, but the week after, we have two things that are really important, right? We're voting on Tuesday, and voting is important, okay? And then that Friday, what's going on that Friday? Does anyone remember? It's Veterans Day, okay? Which is, we're not going to have school on Veterans Day. Campus is going to be closed on that Friday. So not next week, but the week after is going to be a really big, important week for us, okay? And then we come back from our Veterans Day kind of holiday. We have a normal week of school, and then what happens the week after that? Thanksgiving. Point being is that there's a lot going on in the month of November, even more so if you have a Friday class, because you're only going to be going to that Friday class 2 times in the month of November, which is just like mind-boggling, right? I'm freaking out for my advanced animation class on Friday because we don't have that much time left in the semester to do the business that we need to get done, right? Given these holidays. Just be aware of it. It's going to happen. If you have Friday classes, it's going to be an uncomfortable kind of direct impact. Well, it's uncomfortable for the instructors. Usually like, yeah, woo, no school 2 times in a row. That's going to be pretty great. Okay. In addition, registration for the spring semester is going to be coming up very, very quickly. It's historically right around Thanksgiving. It's my understanding that the spring schedule is going to be released very, very soon if it has not yet been released yet. Okay? So let's start looking for that in the not too distant future. Today, however, let's jump in and really dive deep into the process of working in Unity. And we have 2 goals for us today: to get our model out of Modo and into Unity, and then we want to create a really cool environment for our model in Unity that will start to kind of flush things out a little bit. It's going to be really kind of neat. You're going to like working in Unity. It's a great game engine, one that personally I really quite enjoy. So let's jump in and start talking about this relationship. Okay, we're going to start off with a very, very simple example, and then we're going to advance into something that's much, much more complex. Okay, let me open up a project file. Okay, let me find the texture for this real fast. Just happen to bring it with me, and as one might imagine, it's going to be a simple little crate. Let's look at it. It's got the texture on there. Aha, rock and roll. Okay, so my goal today is to get both the geometry and its corresponding material out of Modo and into Unity. Now there's some important things in here that we need to capture and understand and really kind of remember as we walk through this process. Let's look at the scene file and how I've constructed all the geometry and really understand what's been put together. Okay. So I got a couple mesh items here. I've got a low version and a high version, camera, the texture group with all my texture locators, and of course our directional light. If we examine the shader tree, it's just one simple material, okay? One simple material that's called crate, and inside of that material we have the texture map itself, that one right there, okay? Now this texture map is using a UV projection type to create all the, to place all the images on the polygons. That's important. That's really important. Up until now, we've been pretty disciplined in this class with creating UV maps for literally everything. Now that we're actually ready to go and make the jump over into Unity, the role of UV maps become much, much, much more important. And I need you to triple check your blacksmith shop and make sure you have UV maps for everything. Because our game engine fundamentally does not understand those other projection types. Let me show you what I'm talking about. If I cruise over into our texture locator and look at the projection type, the UV map projection type is the only one that our game engine is going to understand. It fundamentally doesn't have kind of a global understanding of all of these guys, like the solid projection type, planar, cylindrical. The only one it gets and it understands is UV map. Okay? In addition, we also have to triple check how many UV maps are currently existing on our mesh item itself. Let's run back over into our item list and look at the object, or excuse me, the item that we're going to send over into Unity, which is this one right here. And check it out. I have a single UV map, and this is the most critical part and often where folks kind of find themselves in trouble. Our game engine is only going to accept one UV map, okay? One. We can only have one, okay? One per mesh item. So if you have multiple mesh items in your scene, that's fine, right? I'm looking over here at Mike's project, and he's got a great crate. He's got some wine barrels. Those are all probably separated out on their own own mesh item, right? Yeah, good. We can send multiple mesh items, but each mesh item can only have one UV map. Triple check. Usually the culprit is when you're copying and pasting from one mesh item into another. Sometimes Modo will automatically create a second or third UV map, and we need to get that back down to one. Okay? Luckily, inside of our UV mapping toolset, you can just edit our UVs. You can copy or cut and paste them from one UV map into another. Yeah, specifically what we're talking about is this Edit UV section in our toolbar. You can cut and then paste from one UV map into another. It's a fast way of getting everything down into one. Okay? Make sense? Everyone with me? Great. Okay, so the rest of this is relatively straightforward. Let's jump back over into our model layout and start exploring precisely what we need to send over into Unity. Now, there's a couple different ways that we can do this, but trust me, this is the easiest way to get our geometry, UVs, and their corresponding and reference materials out of Modo and into Unity. Okay, so it's so easy it's hard. If we simply right-click on any item inside of the item list, right-click, there it is, export selected layers. Now, when you click on this command, a popover is going to get created, and there's some format issues in here that we honestly need to look at. We're pretty fortunate that inside of the Modo universe, we can export a lot of different file types from Modo. Up until today, what's the file type that we've been creating and working with? The LXO, right. The LXO file is the default Modo Luxology project file, right? We need to convert this. The LXOs are not supported in Unity. We need to get it into a standardized model file, okay? Now, luckily for us, there's some pretty prevalent model files out there that most game engines are going to use. For us, there's really three that we want to focus on. And the first one, excuse me, the first one that we need to focus on is the Autodesk FBX file, which is down there at the bottom. And if you look closely, we have two. We have Autodesk FBX 2015 and then 2013. We want to use 2015 because it has the largest library of support features. It's got all the bells and whistles, and it's just a great file format for us to export from Modo and into a number of other applications, by the way. You're going to find out there in the real world that the FBX file format is kind of synonymous with the 3D industry. A lot of apps use the FBX file format, mostly because of its robust nature It's going to export, or it can export, a tremendous amount of information from Modo and into Unity, or any app for that matter. If you're taking your model over into Maya or Cinema 4D, the FBX file format is definitely the best format to use to get our stuff out and then into those other apps, okay? So I always try to pump out an FBX first. When you're doing this, and this is really important, okay? Don't go file export, okay? File export as, this is bad, very bad, okay? Because this is going to include, we're going to export everything in our scene file. You got to make sure that you right-click on the mesh item, exclusively the things that you want to send, and export selected layer. If we did file export, it would send my camera, the directional light, this folder. It would take everything that's currently sitting in our item list and send that into an FBX file format. We just want to send the mesh item with its corresponding UV map and its reference materials, okay? All right, let's pump out an FBX real fast and get to work here. So I'm going to do FBX 2015, and I almost always do just layers. That way, I'm filtering the item list, and I'm ensuring that just the thing that I selected is going to go, and I'm not going to accidentally, because this happens from time to time, I'm not going to accidentally send the camera, the light. You can even send and include your animations in the FBX file format. It's a great, nifty file format. Incredibly robust, but we want to make sure that we're just sending what we want it to send. Also, make sure that separate files is turned off, okay? If you have multiple mesh items selected, if separate files was on, it would send each mesh item into its own FBX file, which really isn't going to give us some advantage over in Unity, and you'll see why here in a minute, okay? So just keep separate files off, and export all layers also off. Okay, so you're going to get a standard OS Finder. Let's give it a good name. I want to put this on my desktop, and I'm going to call this would create V001, okay? And here's something that I do pretty consistently. I want to make sure that visually I'm creating a media managed link, if you will, between the FBX file that I'm about to create and its parent Luxology project file, which is this guy down here at the bottom. If both of these files are sitting in the same folder, and if they're both named the exact same thing, what can you kind of deduct from that structure? That they're the same thing, right? Just different versions of the exact same thing. So you have to manage your media. Let's create the file. It says there are 1 warnings and 0 errors reported in the event log. Just hit OK. Okay. Now, when you export it from Modo, you're going to see your item list and your viewport change a little bit. It's going to appear and almost kind of give the impression that the project file has been closed. Just let it sit and think for a second. What it's doing is actually creating a new project file, putting that mesh item in there, saving out the contents of that mesh item into an FBX file format, okay? It's just going to look like it's going to blink. Sometimes the blink is very long, but just let it sit and think for a second. If it doesn't blink, if nothing happens in the viewport, that's usually a good indication that you haven't exported anything. All right. Let's take a look. There it is. So there's the FBX. Yeah. Dun, da, da, da. Wonderful. FBX. FBX stands for Filmbox, which is a company way back in the mid-90s that created this file format. And they, in all honesty, they initially created this file format for motion capture animation. And then another company bought it called Cadera, which kind of took over the development of this application. At the time, it was called Motion Builder. Actually, I think it still is called Motion Builder. And then Autodesk gobbled up Cadera a number of years ago and included Motion Builder into their suite of core apps, which is why it's now Autodesk FBX. Autodesk is the manager of the FBX file format, and they're doing a pretty great job. Okay, one more thing, because I mentioned that there's 3 file types that we want to look at. The FBX is the gold standard. If we can get an FBX to work, that's ideal, okay? There's a lot of functionality in the FBX that's included in the model file, okay? So we like working with FBX files. However, There's two other ones that I like to examine. If I can't get the FBX file format to work, since we're talking about it, let's do it. Right-click on the item, export selected layers. So there's two others that I like. The Collada file format is kind of going out of favor a little bit, which is unfortunate because it's a great file format. I like the Collada file format because it's open source. It doesn't belong to anyone. It's managed by a conglomerate, a kind of a governing body. And I really just wish that more folks would participate inside the Collada ecosystem. FBX is owned and operated and managed by Autodesk, right? I like to have file formats that are owned by everyone. That way, one organization doesn't control the functionality of our media. So the Collada file format is pretty great. Let's create a Collada file real fast, just so you kind of have an understanding. There we go. And there it is. Okay. The extension for a Collada file is .dae, and I use these pretty frequently, actually. It's so synonymous and so open source that, check it out, you can even get a preview of the model file in the Apple operating system. This is kind of neat. If you double-click on a Collada file, a .dae, it actually opens it in preview, which is just stunning to me. And you can look at the geometry and spin it around a little bit, which is kind of cool. So even at the OS level, we have root level support for a Collada file. That's a good one to have. Okay. And the last one, and I bring this to your attention because if you're going into other apps, especially older apps, maybe apps that aren't as professional, the last file format is most likely the one that you're going to need. So one more time. And that is, of course, the object file, the OBJ, as it's often referred to out there in the real world. The object file is the original 3D modeling format, or seemingly the original 3D modeling format that dates all the way back into the 80s. It's been around forever. This is the most simple, rudimentary file format of the list, right? It just is your mesh and your UVs. That's about it, right? It's pretty basic, but it's almost universal. You can dump an object file into any 3D app on the face of the planet, and you'll see your geometry. So if nothing's working, if everything is broken, try pumping out an object file. It's almost guaranteed to work. If you've ever tried to do, and you're not allowed to do this, by the way, because you're real 3D artists. If you've ever tried to do 3D work in Photoshop, right? The object file is the file format that Photoshop currently supports, right? And don't do 3D stuff in Photoshop, right? No. Why would you want to, right? Why would you want to? Yeah, I'm kind of bullish when it comes to 3D in Photoshop. I remember this person will go nameless. But this person was incredibly excited that 3D was available in Photoshop. It's like, Pat, I can make 3D text in Photoshop. And I went, yeah, thumbs up. I've been doing that since the 90s, man. Anyways. All right, let's get to work, shall we? Let's jump over into Unity and start rocking and rolling. As I've mentioned before, we're going to be working with the Unity game engine. Let's hide Modo for the time being. And you can find the most recent version of Unity way down in here in your dock. Okay. Before you click on the icon, let's travel over to the Unity website real fast, and let's talk about where you can find Unity. Unity3D.com. Unity 3D is a free game engine, and it's absolutely fantastic. Unity has taken the world by storm, and you can create some very stunning results inside of Unity. There's a free version. There's also paid versions. The moment you start paying for the application, a new set of professional features become unlocked. That's not to say that you can't make a game with the free version. Actually, you can make some very good games with the free version. And they include a tool set that basically has everything that you're going to need to make a video game. It's the quality of the Unity game engine is pretty fantastic. I think I showed this little video at the beginning of the class, a couple weeks ago, and it kind of highlights what you can do inside the Unity game engine. Okay, I hesitate, and we've had this conversation before about calling them game engines, because you can see even from this video that's playing on the screen right now is that these are real-time rendering engines, right? That are not limited to just the game world. Okay, it's pretty fantastic. I encourage everyone to go grab a copy of Unity. It's absolutely free. I think you have to sign up and become a registered user, but it's absolutely free. And almost everything, and I mean everything that we're going to be doing in this class, can and is going to be done on the free version of Unity. Okay? So go download it. You have access to this stuff on every machine that on the face of the planet. Go download it. It's absolutely free. I'll let you guys explore their website. But there's one area that I want to draw your attention to, and that's this Learn website, or this Learn page at the top. Working inside the game development pipeline is a challenge. There's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot going on. There's some pretty amazing technology that we're going to be learning how to wrangle over the next couple of weeks, but it dives deep. This rabbit hole goes pretty far, okay? It is a fool's errand to believe that I'm going to give you everything that you're going to need to know to be a Unity expert, because I'll be honest with you, there's a lot in there that I don't even know, okay? That's how deep this conversation goes. We're going to be focusing on the basics. It's a good natural first step. You're going to be very strong in the process of getting things in, creating simple interactions, and then when you guys go on to GCOM 426 next semester, by the way, take GCOM 426. When you take GCOM 426, then we'll start talking about how we take all these art assets and truly make an interactive game that we can publish, sell, use to do whatever it is that we want to do. Okay? This Learn section is a great way, it's a natural extension of our class. Okay? They have some phenomenal learning resources in here that will help you learn all that other stuff, okay? Because there's a lot. There's a lot that's going on, okay? It's a pretty deep app with a lot of different modules and components. In a professional setting, you're going to be, there are very, very few jack of all trades in the game world. We get pigeonholed and we specialize very quickly. I'm a specialist in the art pipeline, right? I know a little bit about programming. I know enough to make me dangerous. I know enough to do the basics, okay? But I'm not a programmer by trade. The content on this website helps you understand your specialty and then dives deep into those arenas. So check it out. It's a good place to bookmark. They keep adding content all the time. The Unity game engine is beautifully supported out there inside of the internet, our series of tubes. If you go onto YouTube and type Unity tutorials, I can almost guarantee you're going to get 10,000 hits like that. Game developers all over the world are using Unity as their primary development platform, so we're in good company. There's a lot of friends and a tremendous amount of support within inside of our community to help us to learn this stuff outside of this classroom. All right, with that said, you guys ready? Ready to jump into Unity? Now, click the buttons. Work with me on this, okay? The only way to learn how to work with Unity is to get your hands dirty. So let's go ahead and start the app. Click on the icon. It's going to bounce. And the first thing that you're going to see when the Unity game engine launches is going to be a wizard, okay? Here we go. Oh, awesome. Let's see. This is the first time. Oh, no. What? It's the first time I have. Let's see. Launched Unity. Okay, that was easy enough. Okay, so here's the first thing that we're going to see is this little launch wizard. And we need to create a couple things in here that's wholesale different than what we've been working with over in Modo. We're going to be generating what's called a project directory. If you have some computer experience, directory is just really a fancy word for what? Folder, right? That's all we're creating. We're going to create a folder, and inside the folder, the Unity game engine is going to create a whole series of subfolders for us automatically. It's going to create an entire library and database that ultimately determines how our game is going to function. So this project folder, our project directory, is really important. In every sense, your entire game is in one folder, okay? So we need to know where we're saving it and what it's called, and we need to directly manage that folder pretty intensely. So let's create a new Unity project. Okay, oops, I think I just loaded one on accident. I sure did. Many apologies. Ignore the blackness on screen. Looks like there's a new version. Okay, let's try this again. Let's do File, New Project, and let's try this again. There we go. So I'm going to hit the New button, and this is what I missed earlier. I just saw the New Project thing, and I got trigger happy. So we're going to create a new project. Let's give it a good name, okay? And I'm just going to call this, I don't know, Pat's Demo, okay? We also need to define, upon creation, what type of game this is. Is this a 3D game, or is this a 2D game? Now, we're going to be making a 2D, we're going to be making a 3D game in here, okay? Unity has a really good 2D, kind of sprite engine. I don't have a tremendous amount of experience in that world, but if you go onto the Learn site, you can actually, get a whole bunch of stuff in there. Okay, so we're going to make a 3D game. I don't want to enable analytics, okay? And then this location is really important. I need to know precisely where I'm saving and creating this project directory to. So let me click on the 3 dots here. It's going to bring open my OS Finder. And just out of habit, I'm going to put it on my desktop. I would recommend that you work locally. Since we're going to be creating a folder that's basically a gigantic library and database of Unity stuff, you don't want to work off of this folder on your thumb drive, okay? Because Unity is going to be reading and writing information into this folder pretty actively. You're going to find that the performance of your Unity experience skyrockets when you keep it on your desktop, and then when you go home, just take that folder and drag it onto your thumb drive so you always have it. But don't work off of your thumb drive. The bandwidth on these little thumb drives is very, very low, right? These are, these are for shuttling files around, really not for working off of, right? The speed of these things is wicked slow, okay? Yeah. It determines if you open the project folder from your thumb drive, you're working off of your thumb drive. That way, and whenever you hit save, you're saving the file on your thumb drive, right? Yeah, work locally, drag that file to your desktop, because the performance and the speed of your local hard drive and your motherboard and all the buses and stuff is logarithmically faster than these things, okay? This is really important for my Unity guys and gals, okay? You're going to find that Unity is going to become incredibly unstable. It's going to crash a lot, and things are going to start acting oddly if you work off of your thumb drive. Not so much for the 424 crew, because our games are going to be really simple. But when you get to 426, when you have very big levels and scripts and game controllers and all that jazz, it turns into a problem, okay? All right, I'm going to put mine on my desktop, and then we're going to go create project. And Unity is going to take over. And welcome to Unity. Okay, your new home away from home in GCOM 424. You're going to like working inside of Unity. There's some direct comparisons between the Unity interface and working inside of Modo. Give me 2 seconds here. I want to hide my dock so I get a little bit more on-screen real estate. There we go. Okay, so welcome to Unity, your new home away from home. Now there's some important areas inside of the Unity interface that we're going to be talking about and looking at, okay? First and foremost, I want to draw your attention to two different areas of the Unity interface, okay? We have this bottom section, the one that would be the project tab. This is important. This is going to be our global bin. Think of it like a bucket, a folder that we get to import stuff into and then use those assets in any part of our game. It's a bin. This is where all of our raw, kind of authored media files are going to go. Think of this as an area where we import media into, models, animations, sound effects, and then we can apply those specific animations to a level, right? One model file can be used in 10 different levels, right? And our project tab, in every sense, gives us a library that we get to work off of. So let's import something into Unity real fast and start working, okay? It's really quite easy. If we do assets, import new asset, okay? This is going to allow us to bring in that model file. Now, I want you to start transitioning your brain from thinking of model files exclusively to thinking in Unity as it's an asset, right? Because it's more than just model files here in Unity, right? Because we're going to be working with, of course, model files, animations, sound effects, images, scripts, and chunks of code. There's a lot of different components that we're going to be working with here in Unity that is just kind of different from the Modo world. Let's find my model. I want to import it in my FBX and hit import. Okay? Look at that. Wonderful. If we take a look downstairs inside of our project tab, you can begin to see all of our stuff kind of filter into the scene. Now let's zoom in here a little bit, because our project tab on this kind of middle section is, this middle pane here, if you will, of our window is titled Assets. Okay? Now that Assets breadcrumb trail is really important for us. And I want you to visualize real quickly as to what it is physically doing. Okay? So when we import an asset in, it goes into the Assets area, which is really a folder. If you look over here, we're going to get a vertical navigation system of just folders. These things in here, or this over here, is only going to show us folders. It's never going to show us files within inside the folder. That's what this center section is for. The center section shows us everything. It shows us both the files, you can see it there, my little crate, and it's going to show us the folders. To visualize the importance of this assets area, I'm going to hide Unity just temporarily and cruise back over onto my desktop. Check it out. That folder is my project directory. Remember, I named my game Pat's Demo. So Unity created a folder called Pat's Demo in the location that I initially set, which was my desktop, right? Everything that I do in Unity is going to be saved into that one folder. So this is gold now. This now becomes the most important folder inside of our Unity media management pipeline, right? Because this is it. This is our game. It's irreplaceable. If we open up this folder, you're going to find that Unity created a whole series of subfolders for us automatically. Okay? Assets, library, project settings, and temp. 3 of these, no touchy. Okay? Don't touch the library folder, the project settings, or the temporary folder. You need all 4 of these subfolders for your game to work. If you start monkeying around with the library folder, adding or deleting things in there, you're going to break your game. If you start working inside project settings, you're going to break your game, or something may not work the way that you originally thought it was going to work, okay? The only folder that we're really allowed and encouraged to kind of mess around with is that assets folder, okay? Now check this out. Remember back over in Unity 2 seconds ago, I imported my crate into Unity, and it went into the assets section of the project pane. Yep. So here's my project tab, and here's the assets section. It says it right there. Remember that for a second. What's inside there is a folder called materials, and there's the wood crate asset itself. If I go back into my Pat's demo project directory and explore the assets folder in there, what's in there? Yeah, that same materials folder and my crate, okay? The assets area of the Unity interface is this folder, okay? Whatever shows up in this folder shows up in the assets area inside of Unity, okay? It is a direct link, okay? Let me prove this to you. I mentioned earlier that I have, here we'll do it with a different model file so that no one gets confused. Let's do this. In a new, I want to put my little teapot. There we go. And let's export my teapot real fast. Export selected layers. Just call this teapot. Okay. All right. So I just exported out an FBX file of my teapot. Okay. Or of the standard, kind of University of Utah teapot. Check it out. If I open a new Finder window, and if I grab that teapot, which is right there, check it out. This is kind of cool. I can put it inside that assets folder, right? And then when I jump back over into Unity, whoop, what showed up down there in my project tab? My teapot, okay? The assets folder in your project directory is everything that's in here, and vice versa, okay? Pretty cool, huh? Pretty cool. Now, we don't want to put our raw, like Luxology project files inside that assets folder, okay? Only the stuff that we want to go in the game goes in the assets folder, okay? In every sense, what you're going to be generating here are two kind of parallel paths of media management, okay? One that's specific to our game pipeline. Okay, so these are all of our games. This is all our game stuff in there, right? And then we're going to need another folder. These are like all of our raw original model files. So let me just put like Modo files. Okay. And if you look carefully at what I got going on in here, so here's my FBXs. Here are my Modo files. Okay. So this stuff over here, oops, these are raw files that I use inside of Modo. These files over here are the exported versions of the stuff on the left that's going to go inside of my game engine, okay? We want to start separating these out so it's very clear as to what the function of each one of these pieces of media and the role of these assets are. If you start to cross-pollinate, trust me, you're going to get confused, okay? And the wrong model is going to show up in the wrong area. You want to separate them out, okay? Now, certain things can go in between. You'll see this here in a second when I start relinking my textures. A texture file that we use in Modo is and should be the exact same texture file that we import over into our game, okay? So texture files can go in between these two parallel media management tracks. Make sense? All right. Let's jump back over into Unity and continue working with what we got down here, okay? Because our little library of assets is continuing to grow here. Of course, I got my crate, I got my teapot, and then the computer automatically made that materials folder. And that materials folder is important and kind of weird and wonderful at the exact same time. Let's take a look at it. Or let's just take a look at these assets. Now, notice that each one of these has a little arrow on it. That's because each asset is really a collection of a number of component pieces, okay? So I got my wood crate, but check it out. My wood crate is really comprised up of three sub-assets, or components, as they're called inside the game world, okay? We have crate low, take one, and then wooden crate, okay? Now, starting from the left, going to the right, what do you think crate low is?
Is that the geometry itself?
That's the geometry itself, okay? This is the raw geometric cage. Now, why is it called crate low, and its parent, the blue guy over there, called wooden crate? Huh. Let's investigate, because there's a method behind the madness, okay?
Is that because that's the UV?
Nope. Let's return to Modo. Unity is doing exactly what it should be doing. It's my mesh item itself, okay? If you look at the wood crate project file, crate low is the actual name of the mesh item itself, okay? And then when I exported it, the FBX file name that I used was wood crate, okay? So over in Unity, what we're seeing at the parent level of our little hierarchy here, let's just jump back so we can see it. So this is a hierarchy, right? This is the FBX file itself, and then inside that container we have our geometry, this is an animation, and this is an avatar for a character rig, okay? We don't have any animations on this object, so 2 and 3 are kind of meaningless. We don't need them anymore, and we're going to delete them here in a second, okay? Okay, let's take a look at the parent object itself, the wood crate, which brings us to our inspector. Our inspector, in every sense inside of Unity, is identical in function to the properties panel that we're used to seeing over inside of Modo, okay? Here, inside the inspector, we can change a number of different things. I want to first draw your attention to the rig and animations tabs up here at the top. So if we go rig, let's see, under animation type, there's no animations on this, so I want to put none and then hit apply. And then under animations, you don't want animations and apply, okay? Now, if you do that, check it out. Down here in our assets, that take one and that avatar are gone, which is good, because this is just geometry. We don't want to have the computer, we don't want the computer managing all that other crap that's just not necessary for a piece of geometry, right? Especially for a static piece of geometry. Deleting the animations and the character rigs just reduces and kind of distills the hierarchy of game objects that we're working with into something that's very, very, very simple. Just the geometry, that's all we're after, okay? Okay, let's go back to our model here for a second. So I'm in the model tab now. Now there's a couple of things in here that we'll continue to get a little bit more comfortable with over the next couple of weeks. But these are just kind of global import properties that will affect how the object shows up in our game itself. If you make any changes to these properties, note that you'll have to confirm those changes by going down here to the bottom. Well, I haven't changed anything. Oops, I've gone too far. And then hit the apply button right there. Okay. You also get a cool little thumbnail of the model itself. And if you left click and drag, you can rotate and tumble it around and see how it works. Okay. Now looking at my model, what's not there right now? The textures. Okay. The textures aren't imported in automatically. Okay. That's the one part of this that we're going to have to manage separately. If we look at the structure of our asset, check it out. There's a material down here inside of Modo, or excuse me, inside of Unity. This is a material, and the shader that we're using is the standard shader. So it knows that there's a material association with the polygons. It just doesn't automatically import that texture file in at the exact same time. Okay? So let's import that texture. Let's do this. Let's do assets, import new asset. And now let's go find my texture. Whoop, there we go. Ah, wonderful. Okay. So how do we get that texture onto our object here? We'll talk about that in a second, but to make sure it's really, really obvious, let's actually begin to play with our little wooden crate or whatever it is that you're using to follow along. Down here in the bottom, this project area, this is a global library of stuff that we can use in our game, okay? We haven't associated the stuff downstairs with a level yet, okay? Here's something else that I want you guys to kind of transition your brains into thinking about. In a game, you have levels, right? Inside of Unity, we have what are called scenes, okay? Which are pretty much the exact same thing, right? A level in a game is a scene here inside of Unity. Let's create our first scene file by going File, Save Scene, or New Scene. I'm just going to do Save Scene As, and I'll call this level 001. Check it out. Where is it wanting to save automatically that scene file to? The assets folder, okay? This is the assets folder inside your project directory. Unity understands the location of this project folder, and it wants to save everything into that project hierarchy. So we're going to let it. Let's hit save. And if we cruise down into our assets area inside of our project tab, you can see that we have level 01 showing up there as well. Scene files are almost always going to get the Unity logo, okay? So it's a great way to very quickly understand the contents of your scene. All right. In addition, if you look up at the application frame at the top of the screen, it tells us precisely which level we're currently working in, right? We got level 1.unity. What game is it in? Pat's demo. What type of game am I offering at the moment? PC Max Linux standalone. That's the type of game. At the moment, this is not a web game. This is not a mobile game. We're making this for the desktop at the moment. Okay? When you get into 426, we'll talk about the distribution route for those other platforms. Or, excuse me, development route for those other platforms. All right. So now, let's get something into our level and start playing around with it. It's a lot of fun. It really is as easy as dragging and dropping, okay? So I want to take my crate, and I want to drag it into my scene, and then just let go. It's just that easy. Drag and drop from one window into the other. As one might imagine, this window in the center here, this is kind of like our viewport that we're used to seeing and working with over in Modo, okay? Okay, there it is, looking pretty good. All right, let's talk about this scene for a second here, our level. As I mentioned before, down at the bottom, this is a global library, a representation of every single asset that we've imported into our game. The area, whoops, almost tripped over the chair. This area was called the hierarchy. This is a representation of all of the assets that are currently in this level, okay? And you can see there, it even tells you which level we're working on, level 1, okay? So what are the 3 assets that I'm currently working with in my level? There are 3. Main camera, wood crate version 1, and the directional light, okay? The main camera and the directional light are the default game objects inside of every Unity scene, okay? And of course, wood crate is I just dragged and dropped that into my viewport, right? In addition, let's do this, since I have 2. If you wanted to get something into your scene, of course you can drag and drop from down here into your viewport. You can also drag and drop from here into your hierarchy, and it'll place it inside of your scene, okay? When you drag from your project tab, your assets directory, into your hierarchy, it's automatically going to place that game object at the origin of the scene. So I got a cool little teapot and my wooden crate. Okay. However, we still need to make a connection between the texture file and the crate itself. Okay? This is done through that materials folder, okay? Or it's most easily done through that materials folder, okay? Let's open up our materials folder. And we have 2. We have one that's called crate and one that's called default. I know that default actually comes from that teapot, and I can show you why and how I know that. It's basically the base material, which is actually called default in the back end of Modo. Okay. Let's work on my crate material. Whoa, hold on a second here. So if we look at what's been created for us in reference to this one game object, I have an FBX file that's called wood crate version 1, right? That includes geometry that's called crate, or low-crate, or crate.low. Excuse me, I apologize. I go back into my assets. See, here's wood crate version 1. Here's the geometry that's crate low. But now I also have a material called crate. Where did it come up with that? The material name over in Modo was named crate. Okay? So it's sending the material that we create in Modo into that FBX project file. Everything comes along for the ride. This is why the connection between Modo and Unity is so strong through the FBX file format. The FBX file format is magical because it preserves almost everything inside of our scene. Okay, so with our create material selected, we're going to get all of its properties showing up over here inside of our inspector. Now, we're going to go through a lot of these over the next couple of weeks. For today, though, we just need to throw in that texture map onto the game object itself. Now, what channel would we be looking for over in Modo? What's it called? What's the effect in Modo called that describes the surface color of our objects? You guys know this. It's so easy, it's hard. You should know this. Diffuse color, right? The diffuse color channel over in Modo defines the surface color of our object itself. Do you see anything in this list here that says diffuse? No. Unity is using what's called the PBR workflow, which is photorealistic rendering workflow. It's a little bit different. We're going to have a conversation all about PBR towards the end of the semester and how we can use it to really describe our models and our scenes quite beautifully. But for now, just kind of know that it's there. Okay? Point being, we want to load our diffuse texture map into the albedo section. And there's really two ways that we can do this. We can either drag and drop the texture into that little window right here, into this little image well, or we can click on this little target. It's actually a button. You click on it. You're going to open up what's called an asset browser inside of Unity. And then, check it out. We're just going to grab create text. It automatically gets loaded into that texture. Ta-da! There it is. Cool, huh? So our diffuse texture maps that we've used over in Modo are going to be loaded into the albedo slot on this on the standard shader here in Unity. Diffuse equals albedo. Make sense? All right. Before we take a break, because we've been going for about an hour and a half, let's just take a step back and look at how we can work inside of our viewport, because I can see that you guys are beginning to import stuff in and play around with it. Our viewport is a little bit different than how we're used to working over inside of Modo. However, there's a common navigation structure that you'll see in a lot of different apps, and that's the Option key. If you hold down the Option key and left mouse button drag, you're going to orbit around your scene. Da-da-da. Similar enough. Now, where it changes is when we want to do like a pan. Okay? To do a pan, we hold down the Option key and middle mouse button, and then we can move the camera left and right. It's middle mouse button, Option middle mouse button. And then the zoom in and zoom out, it's Option right mouse button. And I'm dragging left and right. Up and down works too, but left and right gives you a little bit more control. So left mouse button orbits, middle mouse button and the Option key is the pan. The right mouse button is the zoom in, zoom out. Coolio, huh? You can cruise around, check it all out. Life is good. Okay? Go to the top of the screen here for a second. the viewer is broken up into two really important areas, a third that we're not going to spend a whole lot of time on, but we have the scene view, the game view, and that last section is, of course, the asset store, and we'll talk about the asset store here in a second, okay? But the scene view is exactly what we've been working in so far. It's just kind of an open viewport into our three-dimensional scene. This is where we're going to be doing the lion's share of our authoring in this environment, okay? The game view, this is what the gamer is going to see. So in every sense, we get a live preview of how the game is functioning. Now, I don't have anything in here that's operating my game at the moment, so there's nothing really for me to play. But if we wanted to, we certainly could play our game just by hitting that play button at the top of the screen. Shoot, let's see if we can try to do this real fast. Because I think, let's see, I'm going to save my project real fast. And let's see. See, they used to have, I don't want a video. No, it doesn't look like they have it at the moment. They used to have a really good demo game that you can load in and see how it all gets worked together. It's not on the front page of the widget anymore, and it's really kind of neat. Okay? Questions so far? Everyone like our time instead of Unity so far? Yeah? Okay. Tell you what, let's do this. It is 2:40. Okay. Let's take a small, and I mean a very small little break. That way we can come back and we can look at how we can create a simple little environment. Sound good? Okay. 10-minute break. Okay, so before the break, we were spending some time looking at how to work inside of Unity, importing a very simple object in. Now, let's up the ante a little bit, and let's look at the process of importing something that's a little bit more complex into the system. Geometrically, the system is the same. What gets a little overwhelming, and will definitely be the problem for a lot of folks, are managing all of our materials, okay? So as you can see here on my screen, I've got some very, very basic textures applied to my model. I've intentionally made them look wrong, okay, to allow us to talk about how we can continue to edit our models once they're over in Unity, okay? Because we have some changes here that we need to make. The wood beams are looking pretty good. The plaster walls up top are looking okay, but I got some things I need to change downstairs on that kind of round, reddish kind of rock and brick pattern, as well as the roofing tiles, which brings up a very important conversation over in Unity here in a second. So let's do it real fast. I want to send this guy out. Right-click on it. Export selected layers. We're going to use FBX 15. And let's do this. This is going to be Forge. This is version 03. And I'm putting Unity in there so I know that this is all prepped and ready to rock for Unity. Okay. We'll hit save. It's thinking about it. It's thinking about it. There we go. And let's jump back over into Unity and start rocking and rolling here. Okay, so let me get rid of my little wooden crate. Over in our inspector, we can easily, over in our hierarchy, we can very, very easily delete objects from our level just by selecting it and hitting the backspace key. Or, I'm sorry, that's not how we do it. Brain fart, I apologize. They make it very difficult to delete things in your hierarchy because remember, these are assets that are currently in your game, right? So if we right-click and then choose delete, we can get rid of it. I'll get rid of my teapot as well. So now my scene file in every sense is very, very empty. Nothing in there, okay? So let's go ahead and start the process of importing in that asset, that forge, my blacksmith shop, okay? At the beginning of class today, we talked about importing assets in through the Assets pull-down menu. Well, you can also do the exact same thing down here in your Assets area. If you just right-click in the background of your Assets pane, you get that exact same import prompt that we saw earlier. Here we go. Here's the FBX. Let's go ahead and open this guy up. And looks like mission successful when it comes in for the model file. While we're bringing things in and changing the raw imported asset, let's get rid of the rig. Put that to none, the animation type to none, and apply it. And of course, we don't want any animations, so we'll disable it and hit the apply button as well. Okay. Awesome. And it looks like it grabbed a whole bunch of shaders too. It's a great way to very, very quickly understand what shaders have made the trip, okay, or what materials have made the trip over from Modo into Unity by looking at the bottom section of the inspector when we're importing it in. And here we go, bottom, chimney, walls, roof, wood, and default. Now, default is the base material, okay? If you have any polygons, and I mean any polygons that are unreferenced to a material, in Modo, they're going to get assigned to the base material automatically, right? If you have anything being referenced to the base material, it's going to come in as default. Just know that. This is the base material over in Modo. It's made the trip as well. Officially on the back end of the Modo database, the base material is called default. So things are looking pretty good. I'm liking this. There's my geometry, rock and roll. Let's put this into my scene file real fast and start looking at how we can shade it. Let's rotate my light around too. Oh, FYI, if you haven't discovered this yet, this allows you to move, rotate, and scale game components. This is called the rectangle tool. This is something you will see in 426 when we start making interfaces. But let's change the orientation of my directional light real fast. Yeah, it's very cool, right? Let's see if I can orientate it.
The directional light was the little light bulb, but
Let's see. Yeah, it's the sun. Yeah. Let's see. Trying to zip it around a little bit. I may have rotated it too much. Yeah, see, as you move the sun around, the background environment changes as well, which is just so very cool.
imagine trying to do that in Modo.
I know. Well, you can. You can. It's called the physical sun in Modo. It's pretty neat. All right, this is good enough. So let's look at what we can do here to start associating those textures with my materials itself. Let's look at the actual materials folder, because this is where it starts to get really, really overwhelming, right? This materials folder. Because if we're not careful, this is going to grow. I want you to look on my screen just real fast, and you'll probably see this on yours as well. Look at how they've named all of the materials. What would you call the naming convention for each one of these materials here inside of Unity? How would you describe their relationship to what we saw in Modo? Identical, right? They're identical to what we named our material groups over in Modo. Now, project yourself a little bit. Project yourself into GCOM 426, right? You're not working with one asset. You're working with 80 assets on one level, right? Because when you think of a level, I mean, shoot, have you guys seen the stuff coming out of Battlefield 1? I mean, it is amazing what they're doing these days, okay? Yeah, it's crazy. The level of details in a AAA title like Battlefield 1 is just redonkulous, right? You have thousands. Did you guys see the trailer for Red Dead Redemption 2? FYI, and I shouldn't probably say this on a live stream, but I know for a fact that Modo was using a big way on Red Dead Redemption 2, which is cool. You didn't hear that from me. Internet, please ignore what I just said. I won't tell you how I know that. Let's just put it that way. It is amazing what they're doing. It's not just a couple models in a level. It's thousands of models in one level, right? Maybe during a break I'll show you the trailer for Red Dead Redemption 2. I'm a huge Red Dead fan. I still play Red Dead Redemption. It's just one of my favorite games, and I am impatiently awaiting Red Dead Redemption 2 next year. Regardless, project yourself into 426. You have 50 different assets on one level. This materials folder is going to get a little dicey pretty quickly, right? Because how can we quickly go in and find the material that's associated with just the crate? If they're all named kind of arbitrary things like bottom and chimney, default, roof, walls, well, which walls, right? Which roof is this material really, is really influencing, right? Which chimney? If I'm modeling a scene that's an entire village, right? Which chimney is that material influencing, right? This is going to turn into a little bit of a media nightmare, a media management nightmare if we're not careful. Let me show you an alternative, right? And this is going to require me personally to kind of restart some stuff, but it's important. Okay, remember, the default settings are going to get you this. They're going to take directly all of the names from the materials that you created over in Modo. The name itself, in this particular import property, or preference, doesn't tell us which game object that this material is assigned to. If we go back into our assets folder and look at the raw forge, so this is the FBX file, right? We have a great option over here in the import settings, and these are only found in the import settings for the asset itself. And there's a materials section here, and it says import materials, so we get to turn that on and off, which is like, yay, I like that, awesome, okay? And then we get to change how the materials in Unity are going to be titled in the materials folder. If we leave it at the defaults, which is by base texture name and recursive up, it's going to take the material name that we created over in Modo and use that as the material name here in Unity, which is good. It's good for if you're doing a couple things, but if we're doing a lot of big things, this is a big time problem for us. So if we change this, check it out. We have some options in here. So we have from models material, and then model name plus models material. That's what I'm after, because I want to make sure that in the name of the material here in Unity, I have a direct understanding as to which game object, which model this material is associated with, right? Because if you have 2,000 of these materials in one folder, how are you very going to quickly parse all these materials from each other? So this is what I do. So I do model name plus material, and then, yeah, let's hit apply. Now, unfortunately, let's see if they fixed it. Yeah. Unfortunately, this is what's going to happen, okay? It's going to double the amount of materials. It's going to leave all those old materials in there. Then it's going to generate a whole new one, a whole suite of new ones. And you can see pretty quickly here that now it's like Forge 3. I know exactly which model this material is assigned to. In its current view, we really don't get a great list. I kind of grumpy about that because I like lists. Okay, so now check it out. If you look at the name of that material, it's Forge version 3 underscore Unity, which is the name of the actual FBX file that I imported into Unity, right? So that's good. And then it gives me a little hyphen, and then bottom, the actual name of the material itself, okay? This is a great way of working, okay? Because it allows us very quickly and almost instantaneously to understand which model file these materials are influencing, okay? However, this is something that you're going to want to do when you initially import your Forge, because now, check it out, I have, this is the Forge version 3 Unity bottom material, and then I also still have the old bottom material, okay? Now, you can go in and select these. Yep, and we'll delete them. It's going to say, are you really sure? Yep, delete them, bye-bye. Woods, wall, roof. Those who don't need any more, delete these. Are you really sure? Yeah, I'm sure. Okay. And now these are the materials that are ultimately responsible for shading my Forge. Okay. And if you look over here, so I have my game asset, my game object selected, and you can see all the materials that are currently associated with it. All right. So our materials folder is going to get quite big, okay? If we change that one import property, it's going to become more manageable. The other thing that's going to take some management, okay, are all these textures, okay? Are all these textures. Because this is just a simple file. I'm looking across the room. Liam, how many individual textures are you using for your blacksmith shop? A bunch, right? More than 10, right? And that's just for one model, right? If you have 8 or 9 of these things in your scene, the texture sets are just going to be a lot to manage. So let's be organized with it. Here's a good suggestion, actually, one that I try to do as much as I can. I try to make little packages, okay? Little packages for each asset. It takes a little bit of management, but trust me, it is worth it, okay? Let's do some media management. We can actually create a folder. Hold on a second. It's right here. Create folder. And let's do this. So let's call this Forge, okay? And now, inside here, I want to place everything that's associated with the Forge, okay? So I'm going to put that thing in there. There's the model. Now, the materials, this is going to get kind of dicey. Let's see if I can select them here. There we go. And I'm going to throw them in my Forge folder, okay? While we're here, now that I'm starting to collect all the assets, that are responsible for drawing this game object. Let's start getting specific. Let's create another subfolder. This will be materials. And then I'll create a third one. Oops, I didn't mean to do that. There we go, at the right level. And this is going to be textures. Okay, so these are all going to go in the materials folder. And then I'm going to import all my textures into there. Let me get rid of that new folder. Yes, I know, it's undoable. There we go. So now that I'm in that texture subfolder, let's import in all the textures that are responsible for drawing my, or for shading my forge. Here's a challenge, though. This is something that we can't avoid. I have, what, 5 textures that are all associated with my forge. I would love nothing more to import them all at the exact same time. Guess what? You can't. However, let me show you, because if I hold down the Shift key and grab that bottom one, this one right there, oh yeah, I can only do individuals. Oops. Which one did I just import in? Okay, that one. However, check this action out. This is actually kind of neat. If I do it through the Finder window, let's go to my desktop. Here is my project directory, my assets folder. Here's the forge, textures, okay? So brick, just want to make sure I don't import the same one in. Okay, so check it out. If I grab them, if I do it through the Finder window, I absolutely can import them all at the same time. And then when I jump back over here to Unity, I'll get a little progress bar and all that stuff's going to come in. Okay, rock and roll. This is a good suggestion. I like doing this because I want to know quickly the materials that are responsible for drawing the surface color for my asset and all the textures, pretty quickly. Okay. And now it's just a process of going in and making connections with the materials. Okay. All right. So which one's this? This is the bottom. Let's click on the target over here. Click on that little target. And which one? It was that one. Yep. Awesome. Let's keep going here. This is the chimney. The chimney is, let's see, must have been that one. Yep. Here's the default, which is the base material. We'll leave that unchanged. Here's the roof. There we go. This is the walls, which is the plaster one. There we go. And this, by default, is going to be all my wood beams. All right. So now it's generally starting to look like how we had it over in Unity. Okay? Or excuse me, how we had it over in Modo. It's very, very similar, but I still have some work in here that I need to do. As I mentioned before we started this whole process, I have 2 areas on the model that I need to update. As you can see, the texture on the bottom part, the first floor of my forge, is way too big. There are 2 strategies, and go back in time a week when you're working on your own forge. There's 2 strategies that we can employ to make this texture smaller on the model. What are those strategies? Yes. And what else? This is the one that goes generally unnoticed for most folks. We go back over here and look at the actual texture itself. Okay. Examine the texture locator. The horizontal and vertical wrap does a great job of making the texture smaller, right? By increasing this value, we effectively stamp down that image in the exact same positive UV quadrant by the value that we enter in there. Right now, we're only stamping this texture once inside of the positive UV quadrant. If I put a value of 2 in here, now we're going to get 2 vertical and 2 horizontal stamps in the exact same area. So the illusion that we get is smaller bricks. So that may be the pattern we want, a horizontal and vertical wrap of 3, which is looking pretty good. Now, what does this translate over into Unity? We don't get that horizontal and vertical wrap, but we do get tiling. This is on the material. The horizontal and vertical wrap in Modo translates into a tiling value here in Unity. So if I put this to 3 by 3, hit return. I'm on the wrong material. I'm doing that for the beams. Let's put that back to 1. Grab the right material, Pat. There we go. So 3 by 3. Of course, it's not going to do a single. I'm doing the wrong one. I'm a dork. I apologize. I'm doing the secondary map area. I want this one up here. I was like, why isn't it updating? It should update immediately. And there it is. Okay. Now, we have a problem up here for our roof. Of course, I could go in and very quickly change that tiling value to make the image tile more in the exact same space. But really what I need to do in this area is change the UV map, right? This is a cool thing. I like doing this. This is kind of neat because I can go back over into Modo real fast. Find my UVs. Let's just do it real fast. I'll do the big one. Make it the appropriate size. Somewhere right around in there. That's pretty good. Yep. And check this action out. I want to overwrite the file that's inside of my asset directory. Let's export this model out again. Same thing, but this time, instead of putting it, well, I'll put it in the exact same spot. It's going to go on my desktop. I have to name it the exact same thing. I want to replace the existing file. Now, I don't want to re-import this asset back into Unity. I want to overwrite the file that's currently sitting in my project directory. So, in every sense, this file right here, I just created over in Modo. It contains the corrected UV map, and I need to replace that file with the one that's in the assets directory in my Unity project folder. Let's go find that one real fast. Here's the beginning of my project folder. Pat's demo, assets, Forge. There it is. Okay. So if I'm going to hold down the Option key to copy this file into that folder, it's going to say, are you really sure? Yep, let's replace it. And now, since we overwrote that file, I go back into Unity and it updates immediately. It doesn't re-import all the textures in. It just replaces the model file. If you go look at the other files in here, all the materials are still the same. If you go back into the original materials folder, it's still empty. It's a great way to do what's called round tripping, where we can make edits to a model without having to re-import it every time into Unity. It's a great, handy-dandy way of making corrections and changes to our model files. All right. Questions on that so far? No? Everyone good? All right. So here's the next thing that we're going to do. This is going to be kind of fun. For our homework assignment this week, you're going to be building an environment for your little blacksmith shop. This is an environment that you're going to build exclusively in Unity using the awesome terrain tools that we can find inside our app. Let's do it real fast. It's a lot of fun. So there's the front of my house. Okay. So in Unity, if we want to create something in the application, we're going to be creating what's called a game object. Okay. At the top of our screen, we have the game object pull-down menu. Let's do it. Here we go. Game object, and do this with me. Okay. It's under 3D object, terrain. The sculpting tools, or the terrain tools inside of Unity, are really neat. And they're going to allow us to sculpt a terrain. So we'll be able to go in and kind of organically create like hills and valleys and so on and so forth, okay? But we're going to initially begin with the terrain. Let's do it. There it is. And our terrain is Gigantor, right? In reference to our house. It's huge, okay? You can see it showing up way over here instead of our hierarchy. Life is good, okay? Now, the first thing that we need to do is that we need to make this a little bit smaller, don't you think? Because right now, it is Gigantor, okay? And we do that by using our terrain tools. And this is over in the inspector. These are all terrain tools. We'll go over some of these here in a minute. But this last one that generally looks like a gear, are our terrain settings. And if we go down here, where is it? There it is. Width, length, and height. Okay? Let's change this. I want to change mine. And you want to do this first. We're about to enter into a point of no return. And let's put this to 150. 150, and the height doesn't matter at the moment. Yeah, and now my terrain is much, much smaller. Okay? Which is a little bit more appropriate given the size of my house. And let's just move my house. Yeah, cool, huh? You even get a real-time shadow, which is pretty neat. Okay, let's go back to our terrain for a second. And now we can just have some fun. Check this out. These are all sculpting tools, which is kind of neat. Okay? So we can raise and lower the terrain. We get a brush down here that we can do it with. We have brush size. The opacity is like the intensity. And here we go. Let's just do it. Oops. Why is that? Let's make the brush size. There we go. My brush size was too small. And my opacity is off. There we go. So if you're clicking and you get a mountain immediately, lower your opacity quite significantly, and then it won't be as sudden. Okay? If you hold down the Shift key, you can smooth everything out. Kind of lowers it, but it's really the smooth tool. Okay? Which is kind of fun. I don't find this soft brush very compelling. It gives you pretty poor results. Okay? It's kind of like an abstract terrain. However, what I do find to be, let's just smooth all this out here. I'll make my brush size pretty big, make it a hard brush, and I'll just kind of move my mountains down real fast. What I do find very compelling when it comes to height information and describing an environment with the sculpting tools inside of Unity are all these other detail brushes. These in here are quite good. Like I use this dots one like all the time. It's really kind of nice just to kind of start flushing things out. Let's use one of these dots. Yeah, there we go. Because now, this is still a little too extreme, but that's okay. Now we can start going in and creating some really kind of neat, compelling shapes. If you keep transitioning and changing them around, you can create some neat things in here. It takes a little bit of energy. I understand that. I get that pretty directly. But it's a lot of fun. Okay? I find, and don't freak out. If you are like way zoomed out and you go, that looks like garbage, don't worry about it. It's going to adaptively subdivide the mesh as you get closer to it. So it's going to look a whole lot better. Let's kind of rebake this to a certain degree. Get rid of all that jazz. I love the real-time shadows, by the way. There we go. That's a little bit better. A little bit more organically placed. Maybe there's a big mountain range in there. Add a different one in. And don't forget about the opacity. It's a great way of controlling the intensity of your brush. You don't want to like instantly grow a mountain range in like 2 clicks. That's an uncontrollable result. But if we reduce the opacity, then we can slowly kind of raise the mountains up a little bit and get something that's kind of neat. Now, the one thing that we can't do at the moment is push below the surface. Now, I'm in the second one, and let's go, brush size, yeah. Now, for the second one, there's not a whole lot. This is really kind of a lower, okay? See how it lowers everything down? And actually, what it's trying to do is trying to take things to a defined height. Let's see if I can do it real fast. 138 is a little too big. Let's put it at, once it gets to, yeah, so once it reaches to a height value of 49, see how it just plateaus? It's not going to get any higher than that. And that's actually kind of useful, in all honesty. But what it doesn't allow us to do at the moment is carve like a river or some sort of opening in our like a chasm or something inside of our terrain. If you want to do that, there's one thing you have to do, and I almost kind of do this, just kind of at the start, is I'll raise this up to like, I don't know, a value. Let's put our height to 50, okay? And then, and this is a point of no return, I'm going to flatten it, which in essence is going to move my terrain up. But now with it up, I can return to the first one, and I can push down. So we kind of have to raise the terrain up before we can push it down. Does that make sense? Okay. In doing so, you're going to completely ruin the work that you had done before. But you can hold the Shift key down now and make some really cool, compelling work. Let's get our forge back up there. F key is a good keyboard shortcut. F is fit. Now my little blacksmith shop. It's like movie Up, right there on the edge of Paradise Falls. So that's kind of cool, right? That's kind of cool. Now, of course, all terrains need to have some textures on them. So the first two brushes, really the first three, the third one's like a smoothing one. The one with a little water drop on it. I think that's the smooth. Yeah. So this one's going to allow you to push and pull your terrain up. This one sets the height. This one smooths out your geometry. The paintbrush will allow you to go in and paint some textures on there. This is a little different. Okay? Check this action out. In order to paint a texture on your terrain, well, we need to have some sort of tiling texture already imported into the system itself. Let's return to textures.com real fast, and we'll just do maybe 2 or 3 textures. Let's do, I think they have, I'm trying to remember, is it in landscapes? No, let's do this. Let's do, it's under ground, excuse me. Ground, and then let's do, oh, I don't know. I think I had a grass one. Soil, it's under soil. Sometimes how they, no, it's not under soil. If anyone finds it first, I want to be really entertained by that. Okay, I got this. It's going to happen this time. Fabric floors, FX ground. I did ground, right? Ice, wood chips. I don't want snow, although snow is kind of fun. Can't go wrong with snow. Grunge, landscapes. I tried, right? Here, I'm done with this. I'm searching. Here we go. All right, wonderful. That will do. So let's download that one, and let's download something that's very different. Like, I saw one a second ago under soil. Just to make it so drastically different, let's do this wavy beach pattern just because it's different. That one, congratulations. You're now part of my game. Okay, since these are textures, we got to import them in, okay? Just like any other asset into Unity. You're going to find that we're going to be importing a lot of stuff in Unity, so get used to this workflow. If we want to use it, we got to import it in. Yep. All right, so I have that texture, which is my beach. I have that texture, which is my ground. Okay, now that we've got them in our system, we can use them as part of our terrain painting system. So let me go back to my terrain. I'm in the paintbrush tool now. And in order for us to paint down that information, we have to load it in to this textures area, okay? Think of this like a small library of textures that we can paint with just for our terrain tools. So in order to load in a texture, we go Edit Textures. It's going to ask you to add one. Now the first one that you add, okay, you can even drag and drop it in there. The first one that you add is going to flood the entire map with that texture. See? It floods it. That's okay. Just know that the first one that you add is going to go everywhere. We can take them away in a second. The second one, let's add in another texture. Add texture. Let's drag in my wavy sand. Okay. The second one is going to show up underneath our paintbrush. Okay. If we select it in our library, check it out. Of course, nothing's going to happen. It might help if I turn my opacity up. Let's do it at 100%. Why is that not working? Oh, the target strength is off. There we go. And now I can interactively paint. Let's turn the strength down. Yeah, start to blend it out. This is where these other brushes really come into play. Because now we can begin with some of these grunge brushes to start feathering things out a little bit. Okay. And it makes it pretty interactive. Now, if we want, maybe I had too much sand in there, I can go back in with and just select my grass one and start defining how that looks if I want to. It's really neat, really neat. Remember your opacity. If you want it to kind of be feathered out a little bit, the opacity is really going to help, okay? As will the target strength, okay? You can do some really great blending in there. Yeah, that's cool. It's good stuff. It's good stuff, okay? It's a pretty easy system to use, but you have to go in and start adding some stuff in there to give, to start sculpting your terrain. This is a great way to make different zones. You can make roads real fast like this too. It's really, really neat. Okay, questions on this? Everyone good? Yes, sir.
How do we size terrain?
So it's in your terrain settings, which is that little gear icon right here. The last one is at the very bottom. Terrain width, length, and height. Okay. Pretty cool, huh? Yes, sir. Okay. Okay. Hit the F key with your cursor in the viewport. Okay. No, just hit F. Okay. Go grab your terrain once more. And it looks like you have two of them in there. You have that one, and what about the one right above it? Yeah. Okay.
It's still not showing up.
Yeah. Well, nope. It looks like you're in 3D. Here's what I would do. I would delete that terrain.
Okay.
Then also, I want you to delete your terrain data down here. That. Yep. Oops, thinking about it. There you go. And just generate a whole new terrain. It's thinking about it. It's thinking about it. Huh. Orbit around in your scene a little bit. Here, go. Can you select your tree? Yeah. And then Hit the F key. There it is. I had a hunch. We were so far zoomed away from the origin that we weren't seeing our terrain data. Okay, you can delete that tree, but there's your terrain. Okay, other questions on how to work with terrains? This is going to be our first of a couple conversations about it. I don't want to overload you on day one of working in terrains, but it's pretty fun. Okay, so our mission this week for our homework is to finish our blacksmith shop if it's not done yet, okay? And if we go back over into D2L real fast. There we go. If we go back over into D2L real fast, we can see that, let's do this. Yeah, our job this week is just to create an environment for our blacksmith shop, okay? That's it. If you wanted to import some tree models in, or if you find some trees on the asset store, you can use those too. I'm going to talk about trees and bushes and detail meshes in the future. I think let's just start off with this easy thing this week, and then we'll advance on to something more complex. Yeah?
So, quick question. Well, this is more of a problem, but I try and use different brushes, but it's still using like the soft brush sort of thing, if you will.
Okay.
And I don't know what I'm doing. So,
Okay.
you see that, and then let's say that.
Try increasing, hold on, yeah, 1 second. We'll try increasing your brush size a little bit. And let's do this. Let's go back to this first one. Get the same function here. Let's change the brush one more time. That's the hard brush. Yeah, I don't have an answer for you on that one. That's kind of strange. I've never seen it do that. I've never seen it not load a paintbrush in. Try restarting Unity, see if that makes a difference. Okay, one last thing before I let you guys start working on your terrains and getting your blacksmith shops all finished up and ready to rock and roll. When it comes to turning in this project, here's what I would like you to do. You're going to zip up your Unity project directory. So I want your Unity folder itself. So in my case, I want Pat's demo. This is what I want you guys to turn in to D2L when you're finished with this assignment, okay? Now, D2L doesn't allow us to upload a folder, okay? It only allows zipped archives. So on the Mac, and I think you can do something very similar over on the PC, it's really, really easy to compress this into an archive, a zip file, on the Mac. And I think you can do this similarly on a PC. If you just right-click, what we want is compress Pat's demo, and then it's going to make a zipped archive of that folder. Bloop. And there it is. It's going to be kind of big now, okay? These files are not small. It's about 30 megabytes in size. So keep that in mind, because this contains everything, right? This contains your models, the textures, all the terrain data that you just scoped down. Your project directories are going to get quite large now, so be prepared for that. All right. Any questions on what we're doing this week? Getting to know Unity, getting everything out of Modo into Unity, and creating a terrain in Unity. Okay, ready? All right, we got about, let's see, an hour left in class. Let's use this time to get a jump start in all this. Sound good? Rock and roll. All right, let's get to work.